Hello, and thank you for coming to my talk, Monsters, Mutations, and Myths, a popular history of nuclear waste in North America. My name is Dr. Ian Brown, and I'm a researcher and lecturer at the University of Regina, with my research being funded by the Sylvia Fedoruk Center for Nuclear Innovation. Today I would like to talk about nuclear waste, specifically beliefs around nuclear waste as informed through popular culture. The term belief in government, in education, in science is often equated with idea or thought or opinion. And the ways in which beliefs are formed are thought to be through a rational process of one encountering information, interpreting that information based on what they already know, and then forming a belief. So in the case of beliefs about nuclear waste, we would imagine people encountering information about nuclear waste, interpreting it based on other things they know, and then forming a belief about nuclear waste. Based on this process, it is crucially important that the initial information is correct, as correct information will lead to correct beliefs, whereas incorrect information will lead to incorrect beliefs. In the event that someone holds incorrect beliefs about, for example, nuclear waste, this model imagines refutation can take place if the initial incorrect information is refuted, and then the incorrect belief will be replaced with a proper belief. In education, this is known as the deficit model, where if someone believes something that is incorrect, the assumption is you simply need to tell them the correct thing, and then that belief will change. This model, however, has been shown to not work in actually changing people's beliefs, and in particular, beliefs about nuclear waste. Why is this? Today, I will suggest that it is the nature of belief itself that renders the deficit model unhelpful. Beliefs help us to understand the world around us. They do not exist on their own, they cannot be isolated from other beliefs that make up our worldview, and they are frequently entangled with stories, with practices, with social identities, and other beliefs. The beliefs that we hold have stakes. So, for example, take the statement, "I believe that it is going to rain tomorrow." This is connected to other beliefs that I may hold in my trust in meteorology or science generally. And the stakes in making this belief known are relatively low. If I'm right, then it rains. If I'm wrong, it does not shake my understanding of science or meteorology. Now take this second statement. I believe that there is no safe way to store nuclear waste. This statement may be connected to a number of other beliefs, including what I believe about radiation, what I think radiation can do, what I believe about what nuclear waste looks like, what I believe the nuclear industry looks like, and so on. And here the stakes are quite high. If I am right that there is no safe way to store nuclear waste, and government or industry go forward with attempting to store nuclear waste, the results could be apocalyptic. If I am wrong, my understanding of the world is challenged. Government, industry, nuclear waste are not the things I thought they were. General beliefs about radiation come from both popular culture, popular science, and science generally. So I want to go over a few of what I understand to be general beliefs about radiation before looking specifically at how popular culture has helped to form some of these beliefs. Radiation is understood to be invisible, dangerous, and deadly, and that invisibility is a big part of its danger and its deadliness. This is related to images and stories of radiation sickness in survivors of the Hiroshima and Nagasaki nuclear bombings. Radiation is also understood to be unnatural, apocalyptic, and an existential threat. Radiation takes on kind of a mythic proportion in that waste can be radioactive for eons, and this is a term that is frequently used in association with radioactive waste as opposed to stating the actual half-life, for example. The idea that radiation is connected to nuclear weapons and that nuclear weapons could end all human life on Earth is something that will be very familiar to those who lived through the Cold War, and probably still familiar to those from younger generations. So beliefs about radiation are already generally focusing on its danger, its longevity, and its apocalyptic threat to human life. So where do these beliefs come from? As I said, science, popular science, news media certainly has some influence, but I'm looking primarily at how radiation and radioactive waste is presented in popular culture. And with that, we'll turn to one of the first popular representations, the 1954 Japanese movie, Godzilla. Now, Godzilla is quite transparently a metaphor for nuclear weapons. Godzilla was produced just 9 years after the atomic bombs were dropped on Japan, and at a time when the United States was testing nuclear weapons in the Pacific. Godzilla as a monster is empowered and mutated by radiation from American atomic testing, and is an embodiment of the terror associated with nuclear specifically and radiation generally. The story told in Godzilla is that radiation can create mutated monsters. In the United States, radiation and radioactivity produced its own creatures. However, in the US, the shift was towards superheroes, people who could help rather than destroy. On the left, we see Peter Parker being bitten by a radioactive spider, which turns him into Spider-Man. In the middle, we see Bruce Banner being blasted by gamma rays from an atomic bomb test, making him into the Incredible Hulk. And on the right, the two panels there, we see the Fantastic Four being bombarded by cosmic radiation that turns them all into superheroes as well. So in these two quick examples, superheroes in the United States, Godzilla in Japan, radiation has the similar effect of mutating things. In Japan, creating a monster. In the United States, creating heroes. Nuclear monsters stand in as expressions of fear of radiation, the violence and the danger that it can instill, whereas nuclear heroes demonstrate attempts to tame radiation, to show potential good outcomes here. Turning to nuclear waste specifically, there are at least two instances where nuclear waste also created superheroes. The first, in 1964, the creation of the Marvel superhero Daredevil. This occurs when a truck carrying Ajax atomic lab radioactive materials crashes, and a nuclear or radioactive canister hits a young Matt Murdock in the face, giving him superpowers. That same canister falls into the sewers, covering 4 baby turtles, mutating them into the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 20 years later in 1984. So again, we see radiation, and here specifically radioactive waste, mutating humans and animals, turning them into heroes in this instance. But far and away, the most popular and the most enduring image of nuclear waste in popular culture is the presentation of the nuclear power plant in the hit show The Simpsons. The Simpsons was not the first to present nuclear waste as glowing, green, oozing liquid, but is perhaps the most iconic representation of nuclear waste in popular culture. And these are important representations as they signal danger to an audience. Things that glow an iridescent green are not natural. They signal danger. Things that are liquid, that are oozing, trigger feelings of danger and disgust in us. Imagine you drop your television remote under your couch and you reach blindly underneath. What would be more troubling? Touching some dried powder or something that is liquid and oozing, assuming you didn't know what it was in either case. The presentation of nuclear waste as glowing, unnatural, liquid, oozing, disgusting, goes a long way in presenting it as something that is deeply, deeply dangerous. Staying with The Simpsons, this is a still from the 1993 Marge versus the Monorail, where the nuclear power plant attempts to store drums of leaking, glowing nuclear waste in trees in a park. The result is that the oozing waste leaks into the environment, causing the trees to mutate and grow tentacles, and causing the squirrel you can see in the upper right to mutate as well. Just to get a sense of how popular this show was, and how much of an impact The Simpsons has on the popular understanding of nuclear waste, 23 million people watched this episode live in 1993, and it has been viewed by millions more in syndication. So this is a profoundly influential presentation of what nuclear waste looks like. Finally, The Simpsons also speaks directly to the management of nuclear waste in presenting the sometimes lax, sometimes incompetent, but very frequently evil character of Mr. Burns, the owner of the nuclear power plant. The nuclear plant in the Simpsons Springfield pollutes the water with nuclear runoff, creating three-eyed fish. And the plant itself attempts to dispose of nuclear waste in trees and in playgrounds, in places where people interact with it. And the plant owner himself, Mr. Burns, runs a very unsafe plant in order to save money. He is depicted here with safety inspectors standing knee-deep in some sort of liquid nuclear waste. So what do we learn from the presentation of radiation and nuclear waste in these examples from popular culture? The first is that radiation mutates, sometimes creating monsters, such as Godzilla, other times creating superhuman heroes, such as Spider-Man, the Incredible Hulk, Ninja Turtles, and so on. Nuclear waste itself is frequently presented as green and glowing, signaling unnaturalness, and liquid and oozing, signaling contamination and disgust. The nuclear industry itself is presented as an industry that cuts corners, endangers the public, and attempts to cheaply dispose of waste in manners that are unsafe. So moving from popular culture to popular belief. Now, I am not saying that because someone has read a Spider-Man comic or watched Godzilla or watched The Simpsons, that they therefore think that nuclear waste actually makes three-eyed fish or atomic monsters or superheroes. The story itself isn't always directly connected with the belief that is formed. The beliefs that do come out of these pop culture examples are that radioactive waste is dangerous, that radioactive liquids can and will leak and contaminate, and that radioactive waste is unsafely stored by greedy plant owners who prioritize money over safety. The popular presentation of nuclear waste as something that produces monsters and heroes, that is dangerous, leaking, oozing, does not necessarily lead to belief that these heroes or monsters might exist, but it does affirm beliefs that nuclear waste is inherently dangerous and cannot be safely stored. Now, as I noted at the very beginning, beliefs do not exist on their own, and beliefs that nuclear waste is dangerous inherently and cannot be safely stored are frequently entangled with other beliefs such as distrust of government, distrust of industry, beliefs about environmentalism, fear of nuclear war, and other popular and news presentations of things nuclear, such as news coverage or documentary coverage of Chernobyl, 3 Mile Island, and Fukushima. What is important to recognize here is that beliefs become disconnected from their pop culture origins. People may not recognize that green, oozing nuclear waste is not a product of actual nuclear power plants, but instead a presentation in popular shows such as The Simpsons. How do we engage in beliefs that are based on popular culture but are not necessarily recognized as being grounded in them? Well, we cannot simply or exclusively refute falsities in popular culture presentations of things nuclear. Public beliefs are absolutely informed by pop culture, but they are also largely disconnected from the pop culture origin. So even if the popular culture presentation of nuclear waste is the initial point of information in the information interpretation belief chain of reasoning, it is unlikely that it will actually be recognized as such. As I stated earlier, beliefs are our efforts to understand the world around us. And high-stakes beliefs, such as beliefs in the inherent danger and inability to store safely nuclear waste, need to be engaged in ways that reshape understanding of the world, not simply refute it. Thank you very much for listening. I hope that you enjoyed my talk.